Basically, this is going to be a fountain pen shootout. And I kind of object to the use of the word basically, or, I mean, it doesn't really add anything. People always say that. Well, basically, it's blah, 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 blah. You can just let go of that word, just like. That's like cool. No, it's not like cool, it's just cool. Like doesn't enter into it. Anyway, basically, this is a fountain pen shootout because we're going to talk about a pen called the Basic, and another one called Base, and another one called Safari. Yeah, that one didn't really fit in the list, but you know, I thought they would make an interesting comparison, and the reason is that these are 3 pens that you can buy that are not too expensive. They're not going to break your back. I think a Safari is what, $25. I think Basic is around that price. I think maybe a bit more expensive, but it shouldn't be excessively expensive. And then the Base, I don't even recall what I paid for that, but that was in along the lines of dollars, maybe 10, something like that. So someone asked me to do a shootout between the Basic and the Safari. Apparently, I mean, 2 entry pens from 2 very different brands, and I thought I'd just throw the Base into the mix because that's a nice entry pen too. And if you just have a look at the Base and the Safari, yeah, you probably see why. Okay, so let's start with these pens. I'm going to give you a short rundown. There are separate reviews of all 3 pens on my channel. If you want a more in-depth view, check them out. But for now, let's start with these. First, we have the Basic. After talking you through the pens, I'm going to show you how to take them apart, except for the Base. I cannot disassemble that one. I don't know if anything's wrong with me, but I should probably send it off to Hamish McNag at some point, maybe see if he can do anything with it. For now, the Basic. A nice pen. What I like about this pen is its weight. This is a heavy one, a heavy hitter, so to speak. Let me just grab my scales there. This is a pen that comes down about 50 grams, and for such a pen that's fairly narrow, that's quite impressive. Why is it so heavy? This barrel is huge. It has a huge weight to it. It's like a baseball bat. I mean, I think you could actually physically harm someone with this. So that's quite cool. I like the pen for a couple of reasons. So first of all, it's not exactly small. It's quite big. You can post it, but that's completely ridiculous. The cap doesn't post deeply. So I mean, this, I don't see a whole lot of people using the pen like this. It's pleasant to hold. This grip section is sort of rubberized. I'm going to try and make that focus here so that you get a bit of a view of what I mean. It's rubberized. You got those rings. The downside to those rings is that ink is gathered in there if you put it into an ink bottle. So if you want to fill this one with a converter, it makes sense to fill just the converter and then stick it in and then squeeze a few drops of ink into the feed. Okay, so we've had that. The barrel is metal. It's, as I said, very heavy. The cap is plastic. It has a clip, works very well, nice and springy. And the best thing about this pen is the nib. Faber-Castell makes amazing nibs, and in this price segment, I think you'll be blown away. This will give you a 100% smooth writing experience, and I'm very enthusiastic, but that's because I really love this nib. I think it's fantastic. Okay, now we move on to the Safari. The Safari is another nice entry-level pen. Many people start with this. They are widely available, and as far as I'm concerned, these are very nice, robust, well-made pens. I almost said decent there, which in Dutch is kind of like compliment, but I suppose in English it has a somewhat different meaning. I love these pens. They're very simple. If you don't like this, you can try the All-Star, which is the same pen, except it's made of aluminum, but the same model. This is plastic, simple pen, cap slips off. As you can see, it's not a small one either. You can post this one a bit better than the other one, although this too will be very big when you post it. Most interesting thing about this one, I suppose, is the section, which is just not for everyone. You see those big facets there, which are very hard. Your fingers should sort of slip into place, and some people just don't find this comfortable. For me, it's never really bothered me, but for some people that is a deal breaker. So if you want to get this, I would really recommend trying to find a store where they actually sell these so that you can try them out first. And with me, I mean, there are not a whole lot of fountain pen stores where I live, but pretty much any stationery store sells Lamy. I don't know whether that's the same case everywhere, but it's easy to find one. Okay, I have a broad nib on here, very smooth, very nice. One thing I do hear is that the extra fine nibs especially are fairly inconsistent. So some extra fines are actually extra fine, some are fine, some are even a fat fine. So that's weird, but no, I have never tried a Lamy extra fine, so I can't really say anything about that. Pen takes cartridges or a converter, just like the Basic. Nothing special or fancy there, except that this one will only take Lamy cartridges, whereas the Basic will also take international standard. And you probably have a bit more variation of types of brands of inks you would use. And that's pretty much it. Size-wise, as you can see, the Basic and the Safari are pretty much the same. Uncapped, the Basic is just a little bit taller, but it's really not a big difference. Okay, then finally we have the Schneider Base. Schneider is a German company, and should there be any doubt, then it actually says so. I think this is a fascinating pen. You have that ski slope clip, and someone actually pointed out that that is the S for Schneider, which makes a lot of sense. I have a broad nib on there. I like that they put that on the cap so that you can just see what nib you got on there. That's useful if you have a couple of them in various nib grades. As I said, black. This one has a sort of rubberized section, pleasant to hold, a little soft to the touch. I like that. The nib design is quite similar to the Safari. So what you have here on top is, on top is that base, and below it is the Safari. Yeah, exactly. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's just they resemble each other a bit. Takes cartridges or a converter. I don't have a converter in here right now, but I'll put one in a sec. Whoops, dropped the barrel. One thing I like about the barrel is this sort of, I don't know, grippy stuff, which is just a bunch of lines. It's not really rubberized or anything. But that's, I mean, it doesn't really have a purpose. And it's also on, can I arrange that? No. I can't really align that in another way. It's always on top. I mean, for me, it would make sense if that would be on your hand to give a sort of anti, slip thing, but they actually doesn't work that way. I still think it looks nice, a bit of, visual touch. Again, not a small pen, and posted, it's quite big. The only thing is, when you post it, the cap feels a little loose. I don't think it will just fall off, but it's not the most secure posting either. It just feels loose and it will rotate. Some people I know hate that. And that's pretty much it. So plastic too, so these two are considerably lighter than the Basic. Now size-wise, the Base is just a little bit bigger than the Safari, and uncapped, well, I think there's just no difference. If there is, it's a micrometer or something. Okay, so there we have that. I think you now want to see how to take those pens apart. Then I'll ink them up, and I'll do a 3-way writing sample. I hope this was useful, and well, basically I'll see you later. Okay, so here we have Faber-Castell Basic, Lamy Safari, and Schneider Base. The Faber-Castell Basic is easy to take apart. You can disassemble the converter if you really want to by sliding off this ring and then wriggling around this bit while pulling. That is not simple, and actually I would not recommend doing it unless you absolutely have to, because it's you can ruin the seal by wriggling this around and making this bit expand. I have a disassembly line video in which I show you how to take this apart for the Faber-Castell Basic, so if you're interested in that, then check that out. It may actually be the Loom. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's one of the Faber-Castell pens. They all have the same converter. Section easy to take apart. Put your finger there, put your thumb on there, and then just unscrew the whole section. Out comes the nib collar, nib and feed. Nib and feed are friction fit, can be pulled out, cleaned, and then be put back together. Notice that there is a little, you see that little hole there? That should align with the underside of the feed, the air replacement channel, like that.
If it's a micrometer off to one side, it really won't matter, but you want that there. Okay, then you can slide the nib in. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's a little difficult. Right now it's very difficult to do, so I just take them out. The nib sort of slides into place on the feed, so you know how to align it. You grab everything, you slide it in there, and you go. And then you take them here. The reason I hold them like this is that you don't want to misalign the nib and feed. So if you hold them like this and then screw the section back in place instead of screwing the nib and feed, you make sure you don't disalign anything. Misalign, whatever. Okay, then we have the Safari. Safari is easy to take apart. Unscrew this, take out the converter. The converter is very easy to disassemble. You see this black part. You can also have this in red. That's another converter type. I think it's Z24 and Z26, but I always forget which is which. You see that black part? You can just slide that off, that ring. It's metal, so don't squeeze it too hard, otherwise you may ruin the shape. The piston just come out. You see that? So you have your actual piston and then the piston guiding unit. Carefully put that back in there. You can operate it. Put some silicone grease on it if you want. Put that back, silicone grease there. Put that back. Okay, then we have the section. Now the first time you do this is going to be hard, and afterwards it's going to be easier. The nib can just be pulled off. If you can't do it with your hands, take a bit of Scotch tape, put it on there, slide it off very easily. These feeds are a little hard to get out. It's definitely possible. I recommend using some type of gripping material like this. It's pretty flimsy, so I wouldn't grab it there. I would grab it near the sides where it's broader. Take something like this rubberized stuff. Well, it's not really rubberized, just rubbery, I suppose. Grab hold of that feed near the sides and just pull it out. It's a two-part feed, and this very thin thing that goes near the nib end, into the nib end. And when you put this back, there's like a rail thing going on. You see it at the bottom there. You see that? I'll see if I can zoom in. There's sort of a rail thing at the bottom of the feed. Be very, very careful. You have to use that and align that well with the underside of the feed where there is that ridge. If you don't do it in that way, it's going to be hard to fit in, but in some configurations the feed will slide in up to a certain point, and I've ruined a pen like that. I couldn't get the feed back out no matter what I did. So make sure this is aligned properly, and then it should be very easy to slide in and out, and then just give it its final push. Clicks in place, take your nib, put it on there, and you're set. Okay, and then finally we have the Schneider Base. The Schneider Base was a nightmare to take apart, and yet I emerged victoriously. What did I do? What did I do? Well, the gripping material didn't do anything. I could just not get any grip on there. Now, what I'm going to do here, this is going to look completely ridiculous. I'm going to put down 2 ink bottles, and I'm going to put that gripping material right there against it. Now, you are wondering, you know what? I'm grabbing another one of those large Noodler's bottles, because that's just a little bit easier. I'm creating a buffer here. Now you wonder, why on earth is he doing this? Well, the thing is, the only way I've been able to get this out, you see that little hole, bottom of the feed, where you stick something in there. I got some needle nose pliers here. You're going to stick this out, and then I'm just going to launch it. I'm just going to push it like I'm striking a match almost. And then you can make it fly out, but that feed is going to fly out with a lot of force. Let me move that a bit so you can see it a bit better perhaps. So I need this as a buffer, because otherwise I may stake someone to death. Okay. 1, 2, there we go. And it's out. Now I'm not sure this is the best thing for your pen. If you take a good look at that feed, you see that this will definitely leave an impression. But if it's absolutely vital for you to disassemble this thing for whatever reason, maybe because you use some violently upsetting ink or whatever, then this is the only way I could figure it out. And by the way, this is a huge feed. I don't have small hands, but this is a lot of feed. You take the nib, you put it back on there, it sort of slides in place, but it's not a very fixed position, so you have to fiddle around with that a bit. This looks pretty good. And once you are ready, I think there is, well, I mean, you definitely see what the top side of the feed is. It slides in easily there. Okay, I'm going to take that nib, I'm going to push that in there. Of course, careful you don't bend the nib. And that's it. So how about we ink them up, and we're going to see how we're doing. That's a Faber-Castell converter. What happened? Ah, here we go. There's another converter. Okay, now I need a little bit of silicone grease because I slid off that Faber-Castell ring. It's a little hard to slide back on there. So I'm just adding a bit of silicone grease as lubricant. Also create a good seal, so it's nothing wrong with doing this once in a while. Take my ring, align the lettering in the correct manner, use some of my grippy material, and we're all set. Okay, so we've got that, and then we have this piston. Well, let's start all the way up, or down, depending on how you want to call that, and then we have some Waterman Florida Blue, now known as Serenité or Serenity. Unfortunately, no one uses those terms, but that's okay. I don't need a whole lot. This is probably going to do. Then the basic, yeah, I'm just going to fill the converter directly because of what I said, right? These little rings are pretty difficult to get the ink out of. Squeeze a bit of ink, saturate the converter, primed, and then we have the Schneider Base. That's the converter I was trying to repair. I think it worked. It let the ink fall out again because it was a little bit, there was an air leak, but I think I got it covered for now. Okay, pen parts, pens, what is this? What is this? Help me, no! Okay, that's base, this is Safari, and basic. I'm going to grab some paper, I'm going to do a writing sample. Okay, so let us start with the Faber-Castell Basic. This is a broad nib. The ink is Waterman Serenité, as I've said, and the paper is Rhodia. Here we have a Lamy Safari. Nib is B again. And finally, we have the Schneider Base in B2. It's triple B Shootout. Okay, let's do a bit of writing. Super smooth, a joy to use. Really, that nib is amazing. This is another lovely nib, very smooth. And as you can see, more saturated than the Faber-Castell nib. You see, this ink is darker than that ink. Super wet, this. I mean, really. See, even now it's still very wet. Then you have the Schneider, which is actually the least smooth of these three, but even so, it's not bad. Gives a bit of feedback maybe, but I wouldn't call this scratchy. I'm just comparing it to two very smooth nibs. Maybe you want to see a bit of wetness. Well, nice even patch of ink. Quite wet. The Safari, now that is a gusher. It's just like putting ink in a fire hose. I'm not kidding. I'm going to put this away. I'm going to wait. I'm going to be talking just a bit, and I'm talking a bit more, and then even more, and then this is still completely wet. And then finally, the Schneider Base. As you can see, also nice even patch of ink, and also quite wet. Now this is Rhodia paper, so it is very smooth and it will keep ink wet for a bit longer. It doesn't absorb it straight away, but still. Flex, well, for the the basic, don't expect too much. You can squeeze out a bit, but it's not a very flexy nib. Safari, kind of the same thing. There's a bit you can squeeze out, but these are steel nibs, not made to flex. And then the base, that may be the flexiest of the lot here. So if that's what you're going for, need this one. So which pen to pick for what purpose? The basic, super smooth, nice to use, but if you like light pens, don't even bother. That barrel is super heavy, I'm not kidding. The Safari, a fantastic, all-purpose, all-round pen. Easy to obtain, easy to maintain, easy to use, lovely little pen. The Schneider Base, I haven't seen these at a lot of places, but they're pretty nice, pretty cool pens. As you can see, they function well. And if you lose it, well, it's pretty cheap, so you're not gonna really miss it, I suppose. So, a pen for everyone. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.